Morning, everyone. We're going to get started a little bit early because we have a pretty popular topic. It's great to see a full crowd today. I'm JJ Geezy from Tyson Printing Company, and also Vice President of the Chamber Board. Bridget's out today. I think she thought she had to go on vacation. South Carolina. So good for her, but I'll step in today. Let's see, just go over a few quick announcements, then we'll go around the table like usual. Due to the topic today, we want to make sure that everybody has some input in the sign ordinance, and then ask a few questions of some key individuals that we have here today. We picked up the tab for lunch, just in an effort to get some people in, so I would thank the Chamber for that. You're going to see some signs start to go up around town. Our goal has been September 1st to have signs put up all over downtown around the Main Street area, and also coming in on Jamesville, Main Street, and I think CC as well. So we'll start to see some things go up, kind of brighten up the community a little bit. And Tyson Printing, of course, is helping with that. If any flash comes out of the peanut gallery, we have a few more of our individuals than usual. So disregard those guys. Of course, it's on topic for us with the sign ordinance. Let's see, things coming up here really soon. There's a rotary bike trail ribbon cutting, 10 o'clock on Saturday. And that's down by Braun Road and
Braun and Cusick. On the corner of Braun and Cusick. So bring the kids, we're having fire trucks, we're having people checking helmets, we're having people checking bikes. So we hope it to be a family event. So please come, and we will have Steve Staten talking. And
don't mention that, Judy.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. We'll keep that a secret. But there will be quite a few other people too that had something to do with the bike trail to make it happen. So we really would appreciate if you would come and enjoy it and bring your bikes, and then we're taking a bike ride afterward.
It's not going to rain, right?
No, it's supposed to be raining at 8 o'clock in the morning. I checked this morning. So at 10 o'clock it'll be
no
rain.
rain. Kids are going to love it.
Yeah, kids love rain anyway.
Yeah, there'll be lots of puddles, which is fun for bicycling. Then just because we're gotten so popular, then there's another ribbon cutting on Sunday, which is at LSM Chiropractic at 11 a.m. That's at 978 Park Street, just over together in town coming in. There's apparently an end of summer party at Wolf Royal, 7 o'clock, same day, also on Sunday. A lot's going on this weekend. Next membership meetings, if anybody has the daytimers or digital calendars on, that will be September 17th, which is on Future Wisconsin. October 15th, Stoughton Hospital, and then November 19th, which is Train Your Brain, which is Roger C.
Yeah, good trainer, and he's doing it for us for free. So come and it really can help you for memory and things like that. Not that none of us have any of that, but come, it should be fun.
I did take a couple of his classes too, and nobody's going to fall asleep through those. He's a really good presenter. I haven't forgotten to take any of my memory classes either.
And so is Jim Morgan from the WMC. He's a very entertainer. We had Steve Grenzel come in, the one that we talked about baby boomers to millennials, what entertainment he was. That's the same with Jim Morgan. Will be the same thing. So he's pretty entertaining, talking about future Wisconsin.
Women's Expo for this fall is not going to be on Election Day, so hopefully that'll help. That's on October 27th from 6 p.m. to 8:30 at the Firefly.
Yep.
That'll be at the Firefly again. And Summerfest, if you're looking way ahead, it takes a community to make this happen. June 23rd to June 26th, 2016. Thank you to the State Bank of Cross Plains, J.L. Richard, and Oregon Cable Access for making this happen today. We'll go around the room and introduce ourselves. I'm going to start over here.
Yeah, I get to start. Hi, I'm Dave Whitlock with you being chairman. I'm under a lot of people, so I'm going to just sit down.
Sherry Carnes, Union Bank and Trust Company, Office Manager.
Julie DuBois, Union Bank and Trust, I'm the mortgage loan officer.
Tony Antonowicz, Remax, Pure Integrity Home Team, or somebody. I want to say Remax, but.
Place commonly known as.
Natalie Fisher, team coordinator for the Pure Integrity Homes team.
Dave Pang, Gary Willys Auto Service. Next to Quick Trip, Ralph and Dawn Hardware.
Chris Baker, Oregon Hometown Pharmacy, gift buyer and manager, and we have a lot of fall fashions in, ladies.
Jill Hoff, Berkey Jewelry.
Leah Hurley from Sienna Crest, marketing manager.
Ann Miller, Fantastic Science. Jackie Mish, I'm with Vanderwall Associates, and I'll be presenting today.
Mark B. Lowe, Director of Public Works, Village Warden.
Mike Slatney, I'm the village's consulting planner.
Dr. Mark McCann with Houston Chiropractic Clinic. As Judy mentioned, we're for 26 years in the same building. It was 26 years on Friday, so we opened that in 1989. We are moving this weekend, so the office will be closed on Saturday, but it will be open regular hours tomorrow across the street, and then starting the 31st, the new location, Park Street. So we're excited.
Careful when you move.
I had already planned to be out of town. So I'll be at the racetrack in Elkhart Lake.
Mike Grace, Village Administrator.
Cal Ruderschild, Express Automotive. Don't forget, kids back to school, it's time to get them cars ready.
Carl Hermanson, Faith Lutheran Church, preacher.
Rachel Hermanson from the Oregon Chamber.
Tom Whalen, Bear Insurance.
Michelle Finch, Bear Insurance.
Hey everybody, I'm Steve Piotr, President and CEO of Oregon Community Bank, and I sit on the board with JJ and the other folks.
Stefan Schwartzmar with Schwartzmar Associates. We're an independent consulting firm specializing in the kitchen and bath cabinetry, and I'm nestled in between my banker and my landlord. Yikes.
I'm Julie Schwartzmiller, and I manage, and we just purchased the buildings with Stoughton Hospital and Pizza Hut, Fantastic Sam's.
I'm Susan Santner of the Oregon Library. A lot of fun programs coming up this fall. We have a harvest coming in, a polka gentleman. Should be lots of fun in October. And then November, we have a folk singer, and December we have a gentleman who sings songs and stories of the Great Lakes. So you might want to consider.
My name's Allison Kelch, Director of the Oregon Senior Center. We just wrapped up our Sounds of Summer concert series last night, and that was hosted by the Oregon Senior Center, the Oregon Library, and Oregon Community Ed. But it was sponsored by U.S. Cellular, I wanted to mention this, Oregon Community Bank, Tronti Incorporated, and HICE did our posters. So I'd like to thank them.
Doug Brunhauer, member of the village board.
Scott Meyer with that Scott Builders, and I also sit on Oregon's Planning Commission.
Jeannie Carpenter, I'm a chamber member with my Wisconsin Cheese Originals, and I'm also on the village board and on the Planning Commission in Scott.
Susan Shedovy, I have Susan's Aubrey Pet and Grooming.
Ray Vogler, member of the Oregon School Board.
Doug Sutter with Keller, Planners, Designers, Builders.
Lee Velasquez with Anytime Fitness, Club Manager.
Catherine, Anytime Fitness Club Manager.
Randy Joswick, Oregon Frozen Yogurt.
Jim Rutledge, ESPN Madison. It's my first meeting, so quickly, we bring the ESPN brand to local communities, local businesses. We've been doing that for about 20 years.
Scott Bachmer, probably with Tyson Printing Service.
Brett Sackett, also with Tyson Printing Service.
Dave Byrne, also with Tyson Printing Service.
Stacy Boudreaux, McFarland State Bank.
Not with Tyson Printing
No,
Service.
not today.
But you're at
Kurt wants to talk to you.
Okay.
Let's see if I can get in front of the camera. Carmen Traska, OCAmedia, and we've started the fall season. Football last week started off with a bang, was it 31-0 win. We're recording football, volleyball, and soccer coming up. We're looking for people to put their logos up there. For a small fee, we'll put that up there for you. It'll be announced at the games. All of the games, we read a script with the supporters' names on those. So we're looking for that. $300 will get you a lot of advertising in the Oregon community. So give me a call.
Who should they, at Oregon Cable?
Yes.
Any other announcements?
There's one thing that I did want to talk to you about. The Oregon Home Talent Baseball and Youth Hockey have free recycling over at the, if some of you seen, some of these should be on your tables. They have free recycling. They're looking for all kinds of metal. So get rid of your stuff and help out for a good cause. They do not want TVs, they do, and everybody's saying, can I take TVs? No, they do not want TVs or any of the, things that are on the sheet here, so, please check that out, that's one good thing. And then there's one other thing that I just wanted to say, I pick on a person every day and never get a chance to, and he's helped the chamber out an awful lot, and he's leaving us on Tuesday, and I don't think that's fair. So, we think Mark, just a little thing of our appreciation, a little gift. Thank you so much. After 41 years and 7 months, he's leaving the village. So there's a bench out on the corner of Main Street.
I'll be sitting on it with a tin cup.
Okay, I just thought we'd go check his wisdom and all his knowledge and stuff when we needed to. So that's where I said that he could be sitting, that he didn't have to come into Village Hall anymore. So, thank you for all your service. Thank you.
Judy? Yeah, I just wanted to say that Mark has done a phenomenal job. Our family's lived here for over 20 years, and we bought an old Victorian right on Main Street, and he really helped us work that through. In terms of home improvements, we have a big tree there. He was out there looking at it. A real hands-on person who knows all about Oregon and how to really communicate with people and have that special touch that we know Oregon is. So thanks so much, Mark. We really appreciate all you've done.
Appreciate that. It's been a pleasure working with all you folks over the years. It's just been great. Never had a second thought. Thanks.
Thank you. Moving on, let's get the sign ordinance discussion started. Mike Slavny, Jackie Mish from Vanderwall Associates, and then Mark's going to come up with a question, but we're not going to be done with him right yet.
While we're talking about Mark, I've been working with him for 15 years now, and I hope I didn't drive you into retirement with this new sign. Vanderwall and Associates is a small business located on John Nolan Drive in Madison. We have about 25 employees. It's great to be helping the village out. I've been coming here since 1970 with my best friends, moved from our neighborhood into the village. And it's been great. I think the village has the best combination of uses and businesses, both in the downtown and around the community. I've worked for over 500 communities in more than 30 states, and this is just about my favorite place to work. It's really a pleasure working here and Mark and Mike. And a great plan commission, the best I've ever worked with, and a really excellent village board. So thanks for having us here. I do a lot of volunteer work in the area, a lot of work with the county and the zoo, and the zoo has this issue. It's got a chameleon that can't change colors. It's a male chameleon, and even when lady chameleons are around, it can't change colors. It's a reptile dysfunction. That's a keeper. So we have a set of handouts here. There's an outline of my presentation, and then the key parts of the draft sign code. So we'll just get those started around. I'm going to move really fast with the presentation because I want to leave plenty of time for your questions or suggestions. It's so the sign code is part of the zoning code, and we worked with the village to rewrite the entire zoning code in 2006, except for the sign code part, because we wanted the zoning code to go faster, and both issues tend to get a lot of attention, so we separated them. And we've been holding off on the sign code, partly because we were experimenting with what new businesses were asking for in terms of signage. We kind of wanted to see where the current trends were taking the sign industry and sign practices. And I think as we came out of the recession, we felt it was a good time to take up the code and try to get it in place as we get more businesses in town. And we've been testing these ideas ever since I got here. And almost all of the new signs in the community, since about the year 2000, will be perfectly in compliance with the new code. We've really tried to customize the code to meet what most people are doing and most businesses. And that practice is consistent around Dane County. I served this role for 25 different cities and villages focused around Madison, and I've rewritten almost 50 sign codes, including those of most of the neighboring communities. Verona has had theirs since the mid-90s, and Sun Prairie since the mid-80s, are several of the communities that I've worked for. The sign code regulates all outdoor signage and signs that are located inside businesses and intended to only really be facing out, so signs that are on the inside of windows, for example. That's the best example of those kind of signs. Other indoor signs aren't regulated at all. And the sign code also regulates, things like garage sale signs or sandwich board, election signs. And how many of you have signs that you put out, between the street and the sidewalk? It regulates it. You can't do that. And you can't do that under the current code, and you won't be able to do it under the proposed code. That's village property generally. And it's a huge business liability if it's involved in any kind of accident, because you've kind of broken the law by putting the sign there. So just a heads up on that. I've had to provide expert testimony in several liability lawsuits, and that was like a fatal flaw for the business owner. And both of them went out of business after the litigation. Just a word to the wise there. The sign code also regulates other kinds of temporary signs, banners, pennants, those inflatable guys, that do this, feather signs. So it's pretty broad in its sweep, and it's something that you really have to customize for a community. Why is the village interested and has been interested in a new code? One is that the old code, it's like just post-World War II, and sign practices have changed dramatically. Just think about electronic signs or, inflatable frogs and things like that you didn't have back in the 1940s. And our competition, for business and community competition is up their games and modernize their sign codes. And we have several of the most aggressive communities right on our doorstep, with Verona to the west and Fitchburg to the north. We did the Evansville sign code about a dozen years ago. And this is one of the last communities in the southern part of the state that has a sign code that's got things from, like the 40s. A second objective was to create a more vibrant downtown. And the current code prohibits certain kinds of signs that we're now seeing in other communities in downtowns. And we wanted to make those kinds of signs, additional signs and different sign types, available in the downtown and why not throughout the rest of the village for businesses. So probably overall, more signs and more kinds of signs and more sign areas is going to be a result of the sign codes. And we heard a lot of comments over the years about trying to eliminate new pole signs or the old kind of plastic projecting signs that you often see at taverns, with the beer symbol or the Pepsi symbol on them. And if you have those kinds of signs now, they're protected. As long as you keep those structures, those signs are going to be fully legal. You can change the sign face. But once those structures get changed, those signs will have to come down. So that's the one big change we're making in that direction. And then finally, the timetable that we're on, we started discussing the issues related to the sign code in January. Jackie and I worked on the draft text over the course of the summer. We presented the full code to the Plan Commission at their August meeting, and here we are in August presenting the code to the Chamber. I really appreciate the Chamber's activity. Judy and staff are great to work with. And you've got a PDF copy of the code available. So the full code, if you want some bedtime sleep-inducing reading, is available for your perusal. But I'm going to tell you the main changes. We hope to work through a few remaining issues, including your input here over the next couple months. There will be a public hearing. It'd be great if we could get this adopted, by the end of the year and have an effective date, on January 1st of 2016. That's what we're shooting for. It's great that on the Plan Commission and on the Village Board, we have business people, small business people. I'm a small business person, and I think that provides a more realistic perspective on these kinds of regulations. I'm going to flip over and take you through the key changes in the code. The new code has an easier to use format. It's based on pictures and just a few tables where all the rules are presented in one place. You don't have to page through the ordinance and find what you're looking for, because it's not all in one place in the current code. You have to look at half a dozen or more locations to get the full story. And it's easy to overlook things, even for someone like me who kind of does this for a living, I'm sad to say. The basis of the sign area requirements, right now it's based on the width of the front of your building. It doesn't have anything to do with your lot size, and it's only the front of the building. The new code will be based on any side of the building that faces a street or your public parking. So more sides of the building will be eligible for signage, and it's also based on the street frontage of the lot. So that'll probably result in more signs in more sign areas on your property, but they'll be in proportion to the size of the building wall or the size of your lot frontage, and we'll get kind of a consistent look to the signs. Even where there are a lot of them, there'll be kind of a harmonious relation between the size of the building and the size of the lot and the size of the signs, and that makes for a really great look. If you've been to any brand new communities or communities that have grown a lot, like Sedona, Arizona is a great example, or some of the Chicago suburbs, that looks like it's real orderly, and you kind of anticipate the size of the sign. That's because of those kind of rules, and this code will have those kinds of rules. Another key change is related to the permitted kinds of business signs. We're going to add new kinds of signs. We're going to allow on-building blade signs. So these will be, smaller scale signs that can project out from the wall of the building, and that's a kind of sign that we really don't allow at this time. And we're going to allow menu board signs by right, on-site menu boards. We'll still have to have a different process for menu boards in the right-of-way, outside buildings, say in the downtown, where the village property, the street property, comes almost right to the front of the building. But you'll be able to do menu boards by right. Right now, Mark's just kind of been letting those happen. They're not really permitted in the current code. I mentioned that new pole signs and new projecting signs will not be permitted. Monument signs, freestanding signs like at the bank here, and the other new banks in town, perfectly meet the proposed requirements. They'll be allowed. So the idea is to bring those sizes down. I'm going to go through this and then I'll take
Are you
questions.
noticing the typo where you just read?
No, I didn't.
There's a typo because it says on there, new pole sign and new projecting signs will be
Oh,
prohibited
it
allowed.
used to say not allowed,
So it
so
should say what?
prohibited.
Okay.
Thank you for pointing that out. Existing pole signs and those old kinds of projecting signs can remain until the structure is modified. That would be the pole base, the frame around the sign. But the sign face itself can be replaced or damaged or fades out, or the business name changes, or you want to put a logo or a motto up there. Those sign faces can change. They do not trigger those signs having to come down. A lot of communities trigger at any change in the sign, including the sign face, but the Plan Commission and staff thought that was pretty harsh. Middleton did that when they updated their sign code in the about 1990. We're going to allow feather signs, those tall, 10, 15 foot tall signs that people put up for sales. Those will be allowed as a new kind of temporary sign, and we're going to clearly allow inflatable signs. Not this kind, all right, but the ones that are static. This kind is going to be prohibited as it is now because they're big traffic safety hazards. They're too effective at catching your attention. And then construction and real estate development signs, a new building going up, a new subdivision under development, they will also clearly be allowed, and in fact will be allowed to be bigger than currently they're allowed in the code. They have to be pretty small right now, and Mark's been, kind of not seeing what people are doing on those. So I'm blowing your cover here right before you get out. And then we'll be making changes to non-business signs because, a few weeks ago, the U.S. Supreme Court made a ruling that's affecting every community in the country. Most sign codes, including our current code, are based on the purpose of the sign. Garage sale versus vote for me kind of signs, or special event. And the court said those signs are based on the message. And that's a violation of the First Amendment, free speech. And we don't know, there were 6 different sub-opinions for that. There was only 9 people on the court. Oh my God, they didn't even agree together. So around the country, attorneys and people who work on sign codes are trying to figure out exactly what will be allowed under that ruling. We're beginning to see a consensus, but we're still working on that part. That doesn't affect most business signs. It affects typically signs that go on residential property or things like political signs. And I'm sorry to say the result will probably be that those kinds of signs have to be smaller as a whole, because we wouldn't want a 50 square foot garage sale sign. If we have to treat them all the same, the result will probably be that some of those kind of signs that typically are bigger will have to shrink. So we aren't done with that part of the code right now. That's the third table in the ordinance. It was done until the decision and done in draft form, and now we're back to the drawing board on that. So what I thought I'd do is take you through the most important page in the ordinance. And the intent here is to make this page in the ordinance, which is still in draft form, the only place that a new business would have to go to figure out what kind of signs are allowed and where they go and how big they'll be. The rest of the ordinance is about careful definitions and administrative procedures for getting a sign permit. But rather than paging through the whole code, we wanted to make it as easy as possible for a business to get a feel for what they can do, what you can do, what I can do. So here's how it works. We have these sign categories and types, and you'll see things like pylon sign and wall sign. You've got this handout. The requirements for that category of sign, and then we have two sets of zoning districts. The current code, I think, uses 8. We have zoning districts that are highly active. So the industrial districts, the office districts, the downtown, as well as the business districts. And then the calm districts, the residential districts. And we have a neighborhood office and neighborhood business district that are for businesses and offices to go in old homes. We hardly have anywhere in the village currently with that kind of zoning. So instead of 8 different categories of zoning combinations, just 2, active areas and calm areas. So freestanding sign, the sign that currently would be a monument sign or a pole sign, you're allowed 1 for each site, regardless of the number of businesses. That's the current rule. Side height may not exceed the setback from the property line. So in the end, signs are going to be more visible because of that, because some people are going to choose lower signs closer to the street, and other people will choose slightly higher signs farther from the street, and that means that signs will be more visible because they'll be slightly out of alignment with one another. So that helps your visibility. And that's your choice. And then we have a maximum height. In the active districts, 10 feet high, 100 square feet. In the calm district, 6 feet high, 50 square feet. And those rules, new businesses have been voluntarily complying with for almost 15 years. So the banks, the Walgreens meet those rules. And those rules are common throughout Dane County and other growing communities. We'll also allow arm and post signs, like realtors often have for their signs, but some businesses also do. And they're real popular in these calm kinds of districts where you're using houses for businesses or offices. They look a little bit more friendly. They're a lot less expensive than the pole signs or the monument signs. And then we have a reminder that new pylon signs, pole signs, are not allowed and they're only permitted if they're already here. So, a business can choose either one of these. It's the property owner's choice. The same goes for the business signs that are on the buildings themselves. A business can choose between wall signs, canopy signs, and projecting signs, or a marquee sign, and can mix those as permitted. We're allowing 1 on-building sign for each business on each building facade that faces a public street or an on-site customer parking lot with 10 or more spaces. Right now, it's just the side facing the street. Mark allows signs to be pushed around to the sides. This will provide a lot more flexible locations, and the math works for each side of the building, so there'll be more area. And wall signs are typically what's used. We'll allow 1 square foot of sign area for every foot of building width, length. Up to the maximum, which in the active areas is 200 square feet for each wall, and 100 square feet in the calm areas. And if you have a small building that isn't very wide, you get 50 feet no matter what. So if you're a 25-foot wide store in a strip center, you get 50 feet. Okay, so that's another thing the current code really doesn't provide, and we wanted to make sure that everybody got enough signage to at least get their name out there where people could see it. Same kind of rules apply for those other kinds of signs. We remind people that new projecting signs are also not allowed. We're adding signs a new kind of sign called a blade sign that's like a projecting sign, except it can't be internally illuminated. And that is mainly, to provide notice to people walking on the sidewalk in front of your building. They're smaller scale. Currently, that's not a sign covered in the sign code. Or you could do a suspended sign if you're in a strip mall that has a canopy over the front sidewalk. You could suspend signs from the underside of that canopy as an alternative to the blade sign. So this is these pedestrian signs are an additional sign category, not in the current code. And then finally, another new category called daily notice signs. Sandwich board signs are in here now clearly legal if they're on site. And menu board signs, which are intended to provide the same information that you might have on a sandwich board, but actually on the wall of the building, on the outside wall. Doesn't count in the wall sign category. You've been in cities where there's a downtown restaurant and they've got a blackboard or a whiteboard and they list their business, their specials of the day on the wall, so they don't need a sandwich board. It's not a trip and fall hazard, and it's on the building wall. We'll be allowing those as an additional kind of sign, as an additional sign area. These are pretty inexpensive signs, and they often have a cover so you can unlock it and open it up and erase what was good for yesterday and put what's good for today on there. I would suggest you get ones with covers so you can close them and your customers can't mess with them. Teenage or 11-year-old boys, they love to add letters and change letters and those kind of signs. That's a whole new kind of sign. Drive-through signs are another kind. So the idea is you can pick one sign out of here, a mix of signs out of here, one of these, and just walk through the table. The main rules are in this column, and the rules specific to the active or column zoning districts are in the last column. And when a new business comes in, if Jackie's working with them or I'm working with them or someone at Village Hall, we'll just walk people through the table. They won't have to look at the rest of the code for any important information. It's all right there. We have another page and we don't need to go there. We have another page for temporary business signs, and we have a final page for residential signs. They work the same way. So I'd rather not go into those. I'd rather take questions, your concerns or comments that you've got. Are there any questions? Let's start here.
I'm Leah from Sienna Crest, and we have an assisted living and a memory care home on the corner of Park and Jamesville Street. About, I want to say 8 months ago, we received, we submitted a request for new signage. We redid our logo, and signs are from 1997, so it's time. What we were proposing is that we shrink down the sizes, the sign sizes that we have right now. Sienna Crest would be smaller, Sienna Meadows would be smaller, and then have one larger sign, kind of kitty corner, to hit that traffic on Jamesville Street, which is not currently doing. Now, from what I'm understanding you say is that it's one sign per location. What I'm saying is 3 signs, so that wouldn't work anymore.
No, it won't work now, and it won't work in the future. One freestanding sign per month.
Aren't those separate businesses? Aren't those separate entities? Because they're separate names, right?
Right.
So I think, aren't
One
those separate?
sign per lot is the current rule and the proposed rule, and the reason for that is in multi-tenant buildings, we would have a forest of signs out along the street. Nobody does it that way. All other communities, limit the signs per lot, the freestanding signs, not per business. You probably, with your corner location though, you're gonna be allowed probably more wall signage because you have 2 street frontages. You're gonna get qualifying area for both of those. I'm not sure you have a third frontage with customers.
So, Mike, can you do me a favor? Can you point on the spreadsheet her question? So
Yeah.
what was her question? It's on the
Her
monument,
question was,
freestanding.
monument size, freestanding sign, you get one freestanding sign for each site regardless of the number of businesses. I think that was exactly your.
It is, and what I'm thinking is one way to get around that where I can still get the most exposure from the corner would have one sign for the two locations pointing arrows, and then the secondary sign being the larger sign on the corner of the lot.
So we will be allowing directional signs on site that can have a little logo on them or your business name, but they're little. And they're just to clarify which driveway you use and which direction. So the main sign is going to be, is and will be limited to one side per lot. So it doesn't sound like what you would like to do. You can't currently do that, and I don't think you'll be able to do that.
I was gonna say, do I have to hurry up and do this by January 1st? No.
And that's a strategy, that's perfectly legal. If any of you see something in the new code that you can't do, that you can do, like put up a pylon sign, you've got until the adoption date of the
Oh,
code.
folks, that's why I was here, so I'm.
I gave you the key, yeah, that's the law, and we want to stick to that. Must be some other question.
What is a pylon sign?
So a pylon sign is a pole sign. And the reason it's called a pylon sign is some pylon signs are enclosed in a little square or round cabinet almost, an enclosure. That would still be a pylon sign. The difference between a pylon sign, which is proposed to be prohibited, and a monument sign is the monument sign, what's used to elevate the sign off of the ground, is almost the size of the sign face itself. And we have pictures, that's, I didn't talk about that. The code, the proposed code is loaded with picture examples of these signs, because reading a definition that describes a sign, it might as well be Sumeria. They're hard to figure out. We find pictures are worth at least 1,000 words.
We did send that out on the e-alert, so the pictures of it's the whole code, and the pictures are in that and everything, so you should have got on your e-alert. If you didn't, just email me and I'll make sure you get the copy of that.
Yes.
I'm wondering what category this particular sign would be. There's a sign out on Park Street right off of Janesville, and it's a trailer. And the fellow has a sign for his business on the trailer with an arrow pointing toward the business. Now, is that one of these categories that we're talking about?
Probably not. If it's any sign in the right-of-way, it's not covered by the current sign code or the proposed sign code. Let's say that trailer was parked in that business's parking lot, and it was never used as a trailer. It didn't have a trailer license plate on it. That kind of sign is addressed in the new sign code, and that isn't allowed.
Well, the one that I'm speaking about, it sits in this parking area on Park Street right off of Janesville.
Right
It's
on the
there
street.
all the time,
Yeah.
on the street, in a parking space.
Not covered by the sign code.
No, meaning not covered, meaning it's allowed.
Meaning the sign code doesn't address that issue, and that issue would typically be addressed either in the public works rules, and some zoning codes address that, although not ours. Some zoning codes require that any business vehicles either be located on the site or at the job site, and have to be within a pretty low number of feet from the job site. To address that situation, our zoning code does do that. Is that something that you'd be interested in?
Yes.
interested in changing it.
Yeah.
Address it, interested in it.
Are there other concerns about that kind of sign? Unlicensed or a trailer typically? Sometimes it's a semi. Sometimes it's just a semi that just sits there. And it's like a big billboard. So we wouldn't address that in this sign code. That would be probably, in this case, more of a zoning code kind of issue.
So the Village of Oregon would be the one
To make the change. And I've written, I don't know, 3 or 4 dozen zoning codes that have that kind of provision. But ours doesn't.
So what is the typical provision that you're aware of that?
The typical provision would be all business vehicles have to be parked on the site of the business, typically in the rear, but that's not in a business vehicle parking site. If they're in a parking site, they have to be licensed vehicles. So the never-used semi-trailer that isn't licensed can't be used just for the sign. The semi-trailer would have to be parked in a semi-trailer parking space, which typically is behind businesses, or a panel at a smaller scale. For trailers, it would be the same thing. Business trailers need to be parked on site in a business vehicle parking spot, so typically in the rear. If they're parked off-site, you know, there are many contractors in the room. I'm a contractor. You know, often you're working off-site. We want to allow some on-street parking for those business contractors, but they have to be at a job site, and they have to be typically within 300 feet or so of the job site. You know, because, you know, you got to have your equipment there, and your other employees have to show up to the job site. So in the instance you're talking about, I think that kind of a provision would prevent that from happening. Because it doesn't sound to me like it's parked on site, correct? It's in the street.
That's correct.
Yes?
I have a question about the window sign category. So it says that it's a limit of 1 sign per window pane. So that's not by square footage. So if it's one large window, you just only have 1 sign.
You can have one sign and cover 25% of the area. So that's a great question. We define a sign as the area included by the message, typically in a rectangle. We just draw a simple rectangle. If you have individual letters, we measure the size of each letter, so you get more signage that way. But if it's typically paper or vinyl pressed up against the window, let's say you were using 2 11 by 17 kind of little posters. We draw a rectangle around both of them and count that as one sign.
Okay. So right now we have an open sign, and then we have like our name or logo.
Right.
So that would be counted as 2 signs.
We're trying to give open signs a whole separate category, let everybody have an open sign that doesn't count against any other rule. It's a free open sign.
So
we aren't sure if that Supreme Court decision will allow that, because that's, they may say that has to be counted as other signs, but I think I'm going to recommend, I'm not the village attorney, but I'm going to recommend we say it's a freebie and let somebody sue us. I don't know that any of you will sue us if we're letting you have an open sign that doesn't count against any of your permitted signs.
Mike, can I ask a question that's kind of related to Jill's question? So, you know, I'm thinking of the downtown area and the definition of window sign category, limit of 1 window sign per window pane, and each sign can't cover more than 25% of each window pane. So that window that's right there behind the Team Ticey table, that's, how many window panes is that?
5.
So Jill could have a window like that, and she could have 5 signs, 1 in each window pane, as long as each window pane isn't more than 25% covered.
That's how it's written now.
I don't know how your windows are in the front of your building, Jill.
It's basically would be like 6 of those, but it's 1 window.
But
The size is like 6 of those, but it's just 1.
it's all
It's
glass.
one
It's all
big-
glass.
So you'd be allowed a collection of signs that we measure as one area. Could be one big sign or 4 quarter-size signs. because we aren't really counting the individual messages, we're drawing a box around the message. So that's, you would get the same amount of signs that way, the same area, as you would if the window were divided up that way. So that's an interpretation, that's one of the things that's written in the code, can't fit in a table, but it's written in there. You'd be okay acting as though you had individual panes.
So is this related to, if they had graphic to go on the window, can you cover the entire window?
No.
So what if they're using that as window tinting as well as graphic?
Tinting is fine.
Brett, you're talking about tinting that has a display component
Tinting
to
has a
it?
display
That's a
component.
sign.
So if we wanted to put something up on the window, you could only take a quarter of each one of those panes.
You could put tinting on that entire glass area.
Yeah.
But if you put messages there, it's a quarter of each pane.
So pretty much any retail shop that wants to display graphics in their window.
Graphics, I'm not sure what you're saying by graphics.
So are you talking about like hanging signs that cover up the window or?
No, hanging signs don't count.
Applied.
You can do all you want, but applied signs, taped up signs do. Yes.
I have a question relating to that. Sometimes people have posters for events, and they temporarily have them, taped to a window.
They won't count. Under these rules, they'll be counted as temporary signs,
Okay.
and you get to do that. I think that the rule in the draft code is 30 days in any calendar.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so occasionally, we have very large windows with just two panes that are probably, maybe one pane is twice that. And sometimes we use post paint and right on the inside of the window, in reverse, so that when you're looking in, do I have to limit that to 25% of the window?
The way that it's written now, yes. Things that are attached to the inside of the window, which would include paint, would be covered under the current way the code is written.
Okay, but even if it's, okay.
But it sounds like that's a temporary thing.
Oh, it is temporary.
Yes,
And
so
sometimes we do.
you'd be under the temporary sign.
That would be under, okay, all right. Sometimes we've done a thing where it's a relay for life, and they're putting their promotion on the inside.
No
Okay.
problem.
All right.
So a lot of those in-window signs, in my experience, tend to be temporary signs. It's a sale, it's an event. Yeah, that doesn't, those signs are not counted against the signs on this chart.
Okay.
So, obvious question, so sign has to have words in it?
No,
Okay.
we have a long definition of a sign that doesn't fit on this table, but it would include logos.
Would include logos, okay. The library has, we did an etch window effect on one big, huge bay window. There's no words, but there's a lot of etching.
Yeah.
So is that not going to be allowed there then? or-
Does it cover more than 25% of the paint?
Probably.
Yeah, that would have to be, you can keep that, first of all. You can keep that, but for somebody to do that, if it's a logo,
It's not, well, it's decorative, isn't it? It's decorative, it's not really a logo.
could it apply to any other kind of tenant in the building?
No.
Why? If
Just
it's
no tenants
decorative.
I mean, applied in what way? Absolutely.
Could a sporting goods store locate in the building and it would, still be decorative for the sporting? What I'm saying is, it's not decorative by having a bunch of outlines of kids reading
No,
books.
no.
It has nothing to do with the word.
It's sort of like the green stenciling there. It's just
Well,
like-
that's a logo, but it has nothing to do
I'm
with,
sorry.
it has nothing to do with the library, per se.
Well,
It's a
it is-
decorative etching.
It's a decorative etching, but it does imply our logo.
Why?
Because it's the same shape of a chevron, but it's all in white. Our logo is in multicolor.
But it's a chevron.
Yeah.
That's a logo.
Ah, okay.
But if it was scroll work, or little corner brackets that were etched,
Yeah.
that's fine, not a sign.
Mike, do you have, this is for either Mike, do you have an opinion of how many signs in the business commercial districts are not conforming to the new guidelines?
How many signs?
Yeah, what percentage of the signs I see that I would drive down Main Street?
I'm only
or-
going to give an estimate for these kinds of signs.
Agreed.
I'm thinking of the downtown North Main Street,
Janesville,
and West Jefferson. In total, I guess about 100.
And what percentage of total signs does that 100 represent? Are there 3,000 signs out of that, or is there 500?
Well, I would say it's probably less than 10% of all the signs.
Does the village want all signs to eventually conform to this?
Eventually, once the sign ordinance is adopted.
Is there any consideration to giving incentives to those business owners to change their signs?
Change them now?
Yeah.
I don't think that was been discussed.
We kicked that around.
You follow what I'm
briefly
thinking?
at the plan commission, but it's the plan commission doesn't control village money. That's a village board issue, and it hasn't been discussed.
And we are going to have a joint meeting with the board, plan commission and board, so that could be an issue.
We might be intrigued by supporting that in some way.
Oh, okay.
You know, setting some dollars aside, doing it a certain structure or way. So if there's a way for us to help, let me know.
Other communities have done that, most often in the downtown areas, but some communities have done it community-wide. And it's a small, typically, in about half the instances, it's like a no-interest loan or a very low-interest loan.
Yeah.
And about the other half of the instances, it's a grant.
Thank you.
Can I follow up, just because it impacts kind of what we print and everything?
Yeah.
What is a temporary sign? How long can a temporary sign be done?
I believe it's any combination of 30 days in a calendar year.
Okay, so a printed window graphic, if it's going to be changed out, because those don't last forever anyway. I guess it would be nice to know what that temporary portion of it is. Because there's, I mean, you look in any retail shop and they're plastered with graphics. A lot of them are.
Yeah, so again, the window graphics, those are not temporary. If they're on like that no smoking symbol, right, that's not a sign. But that can stay up there. It's not 30 days for if you cover 25% of your window. That could be all year.
Right.
I should have explained that, I'm sorry. But if you had a banner that said annual sale, 30 days for that day.
The monthly sale, you could put it up, cover the entire window and swap it out every month.
You could if altogether it was no more than 30 days total.
30 days.
Still, even if you switch out the entire sign.
Yes.
But even what she was saying, going back to the pharmacy, she changes it monthly, so you're telling her now that the combination of all graphics in a calendar year have to be less than 30 days for her? Or can she keep changing it every 30 days?
So let me back up.
Okay.
If it's the 25% of the window pane, that can happen without limit on the days of the year. That could be full-time, 24/7. You can change it as long as it's not covering more than 25%. Those are not temporary signs. Those are allowed window signs. But if you have a temporary sign, an extra sign, like a piece of vinyl strung across the window that says sale, that's where you're allowed no more than 30 days per year.
So my signs, I have to make sure that I never go beyond 30 days with my signage. So it's only going to be up 3 days, and then again next month 3 days, and
So these are big kind of for sale signs, or?
no, it's actually, well, when I do them, they're written on the window, and they're maybe up usually for a week.
Do they cover more than 25% of the window area? That's a lot.
I have to measure it because I honestly don't know.
That's quite a bit of area on a big window. If they don't, if they cover 25%
So
or
you
less.
just measure the letters themselves, because it would go across the entire span.
I can't, I'm not familiar with what you're doing. But you get 25% coverage all year round. You can change it anytime you want. But beyond that, the signs, temporary signs are currently limited to 30 days a year, and we're proposing to keep it. So that's not changing, that's in place.
So once.
I'm going behind you, I'm sorry.
Well, my question relates still to the temporary. I mean, I'm gonna just use an example. Let's say you put up a sign, temporary sign that says, sale A, and then you have information relating to sale A. And you have that up 29 days.
Yeah.
Then you take that down. And then you have another sale coming along, and you say this is sale B with that information. Wouldn't that be allowed another 30 days? Because it's a different sign, a different message?
No, you can only be up
So
one
you're saying
day.
30 for the entire year,
Yeah, that's the rule.
regardless of what the sign contains?
Correct. And regardless if it's a new sign that you keep up or you keep switching signs. Right, so remember, you've got all this other extra allowed signage that we're allowing, including those menu boards on the wall that we're allowing, because we think people will use it for what you're describing. It doesn't have to be food. It's often seen in restaurants, but that's a completely new kind of sign that we're allowing, where you could do that to your heart's content as long as it was on the sign.
So menu board could be used in place of the temporary sign?
Yep, yep, the menu board is like a permanent temporary sign, it's a freebie for you. And we think everybody will want to take advantage of it.
Sorry to go back to this, but Mike, I'd love your input too. The trailer thing, I guess I'm not understanding that. I mean, if the trailer that this young lady mentioned talked about, it's a directional sign. And so this is not going to be covered in this?
It's not covered.
In this code?
It's not covered because it's in the street. But directional signs, if they're on property, are covered by this code.
So
and all signs for your businesses have to be on site. That's a rule now, and that'll continue to be the case.
So in the village, I could have 10 trailers scattered throughout the village of Oregon with my logo or my advertising as long as it's on a street.
I'm not going to answer that question.
I will say that when the staff were talking about the side yards, we've been talking about the trailer everyone's talking about.
Yeah.
And we've also been talking about that people putting up rummage sale signs in the right of way and things like that. So you've got the discussion about the sign ordinance, then you got a discussion about right of way signs. So when we have the joint meeting with the planning commission board, we're going to talk about both those issues at this point.
The sign code doesn't cover signs or trailers that are signs in the right of way or otherwise on village property.
So what's the enforcement? So if I put up a sign, I'm out of compliance with something, I'm Chris and I cover up 32% of my window for 33 days. What is that? Well, I know you'd find me, but what is that? Well, what is? I mean, the village has a very friendly business relationship, right? The village and chamber all get along. We're all making very specific questions, but everybody wants to do the right thing here. What's that all going to? I mean, the village is great to work with, Mike. We all agree to that. But what does that look like? What is that going to be, right? So if Chris accidentally violates something, how is she going to know? How does she get the notice? Who does she talk to? What does that all look? I'm not saying you're going to violate it.
Typically, I do every year.
But you'll violate anything now because nothing says you can't do
Well,
it.
okay, it's not even legal
Mark,
yet.
I'll let Mark.
should we call you at home, Mark?
Typically, if it's a, there's a couple different ways to handle it. I've always handled it, if it's kind of flagrant, for lack of a better term, I'll just stop and talk to them. Or inform them or whatever. In all the years I've been doing this, I've never cited anybody or fined them. That's not has never been my way to do things or style. And again, I appreciate what you're saying, Steve, is that we've always had a great relationship with the business community. It's easier to talk one-on-one than just me sending you out a nasty gram saying, get that damn sign out of that window or I'm coming after you.
Agreed.
I don't think that approach will change. It's the best approach, and it's the approach most communities use. But behind that friendly approach, the village has the ability and has had to apply a daily fine of $300 for a violation. And that's really harsh for somebody who does it inadvertently, didn't know the rules, never was warned by the village. But you can see where if it's an ongoing flagrant problem, as Mark said, from time to time, you might want to have the teeth of that to encourage people to follow the rule. So let's say this trailer that we're talking about, somebody said 8 of them all over the village. Let's say there were a dozen of them in private driveways all over the village, and let's just pretend that the owner of that business was giving people $50 a day to park that trailer in people's driveways all over the village. And we had warned him that this is a violation. Then we could, and we were having trouble with compliance, and Mike was getting 7 or 8 calls a day, and so were the people on the village board. Then we could remind him that each one of those trailers was subject to a daily $300 penalty. And that penalty is added to your property tax bill, so it's going to get paid. And we tend to get compliance that way. I bet you've never had to, you said you've never cited anybody for a violation. But you can see that behind this code and the way that villages often apply it in a very business-friendly manner, there is some real teeth to it. But as I said, right now, if that trailer is being parked in the street, the sign code has nothing to do with it, and it's not, as far as I know, it's not handled in any other part of the building, in the village's codes.
Judy, does the chamber have an opinion about this?
About the drop?
No, about the sign itself, or the content. About the new sign ordinance, what does the chamber think?
Well, we're looking at it, and right now, this is in the draft form, so that's why we had the meeting today. We want everybody to look at it. And then in November, before our meeting on November 19th, we would like to have maybe 10:30 to 11:30 before our next meeting, and maybe Mike is available that we can have people come in, because we want to help our business community, and we want them to feel comfortable with it. So it's still in a draft form. So, if you have suggestions or anything, feel free to email Mike Grace or myself. We're going to let Mark off the hook, although I'll give you his home phone number now. But no, seriously, we really want to make sure this works for everybody. And it's a lot to digest today, so please don't, there's changes that can be made, but I know Mike Sladney's really worked hard on this. So.
Well, we wanted to bring it to you literally, a couple weeks after it went to the Plan Commission, really at the beginning of the process. I'm also happy to answer, individual questions after we're done. From now through the approval process, I've got a stack of business cards here. If you have any individual questions, we often get good ideas from business communities whenever we write a draft code. And we wanted to provide at least, 3 months of public review where it's active public review. We got it in your hands before we move forward for adoption. Yes.
So my most successful form of advertising is my little sandwich board. That's on the curb. I understand now from what you're telling me that's not, legal. So of course I'm thinking, well, what are my alternatives for something, to post my daily specials?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So number 1, your sandwich board now under this draft code will be legal if you move it to the inside of the sidewalk, if that's your problem. Okay? It's going to be legal.
But didn't it say 10 feet from the door though? Because it's farther than 10 feet from my door. That's what I thought.
I think that was for the menu board.
Okay.
Side.
Isn't that the same menu board?
The menu board's on the wall.
Okay.
So second, Yeah, as an alternative, you can do a menu board sign. And it's actually bigger than the sandwich board sign. That's, it has to be on the wall, but that's an alternative you don't have now. That doesn't count as wall signage. It's an extra sign.
So they can go on the outside of my building wall.
Correct. And it has to be within 10 feet of your door, so in a strip center or in the downtown, we know which door it applies to. But that's a whole extra option for you.
What about, so I have my post, my pole with the sign, or I'm posting your, I can't put anything under that, like today's specials, a sign, that would be an additional
That's a
sign,
great question.
right?
That needs a sign permit.
Yeah.
And if it's on the same pole or the same monument,
Yeah.
it isn't an extra sign, it's more sign area.
Like culverts, right? I mean, they're today's.
And they have the reader board, and a lot of businesses now have digital messages. So that doesn't count as an extra sign if it's adjacent to your existing sign, but it does count as your sign area.
Yeah.
It does require a sign permit, so you have to meet those rules, but that reader board is another option. And by the way, that message has to be static in this code. It can't be a scrolling message, because those are real traffic hazards also. Well, they're becoming less expensive, and you can't have video screens that have waving flags or fireworks. The messages have to be static. They can change. There's a limit to how often they can change, but they can't be moving in this code, because we found that they're also too eye-catching, and they're
I think you could put a trailer out there, though. Couldn't you park
right
it?
now.
Right.
As long as it was in the street and it was a legal parking space.
10 of them.
Now in Madison, they got the state puts up all these information boards that are scrolling signs, and they're, blinding in the whole billboards and stuff.
The state puts up scrolling signs.
All over the Beltline, 4 miles to the
Now,
end, or
those
4
are
minutes.
changing, but they tend not to be scrolling in most
But there's billboards all over, they're not put up by the state.
They're the state.
The billboards?
No.
No, they're not.
Yeah.
But they're, how is Madison allowing that?
Yeah, they were typically there. And Madison has allowed them to change to digital billboards. That's Madison.
Well, in an effort of punctuality, we'll close it up right now, but it sounds like Mike will hang around for a little
I'll hang around, yeah. And I'll give you my cards if you need some time and want to give me a call.
Thanks for your insistence.
All right, so good meeting, huh?
Yes, you guys, you boys are gonna see each other